We're super professional here. If you haven't figured it out, I pivoted really, really well with figuring out the video issues. Shelby was like, "Hey, can you do this certain thing with the soundboard?" And I was like, "No, I can't. Even though you told me 5 times, I cannot." Um, but I'll kind of tell you guys a little bit about my experiences that I had. Unfortunately, it didn't make it into the episode because there was some kind of sound issues when we did my interview. Um, but I'll tell you guys about my experiences. So the first experience I've ever had was the house across the street is our office. That was David French's home. That was built in 1850. So we have cleaners that come every other week to clean the offices and the museums. And on one of these days, I had just let them in the office, and I had to go unlock the museum for them. And as I unlocked the museum, and as I came back and I was walking into the side door of the office, I was kind of looking down, and I just looked up, and I saw somebody standing inside the office, and I looked back down, and then when I looked back up again, they were gone. So I walked in, and I called for the cleaner. I was like, "Erica, where are you?" And she was on the other side of the office, nowhere near where I had seen a person standing. So that was really fun. And then the other experience I had actually happened after the Ghost Texas crew was here. And I made them promise me one thing. I said, "Whatever you do, please don't stir anything up and then just bounce. Like, I don't want to have to deal with I love all of this stuff, but I don't want to have to deal with it every day when I go into work." And they did not. They were super respectful. But there was one day I was getting a tour, and I was in the boys' bedroom, which is in the back of the pink room, and just, going through the tour, and the front door slammed shut incredibly hard. And I stopped the tour. I went and I looked around because I was like, "All right, who's out there slamming doors if they're not paying the bills around here?" And nobody was there. So that was fun. But overall, I feel like the vibe and the energy in the house hasn't changed. It's been pretty calm, pretty chill. And I think that the spirits like me. So let's hope that continues. All right, I'm going to turn it over to the Ghost Texas crew and let them introduce themselves.
Sorry, guys. We're also streaming live on Facebook and we're having some difficulties over there. Patrick and I started doing this about 10 years ago, and we didn't start documenting it on YouTube until around 2018. It started off as a hobby, and it grew kind of into a passion. And so we started off just, visiting homes, anybody that said they were having an issue. And then we started doing larger properties like we're doing here. We actually have 4 or 5 really big ones coming up that we're going to be doing soon. But did you guys have any specific questions about anything you saw in the episode? Yes.
When y'all were doing around the dining room table or the breakfast table, whatever that was, what were y'all doing? I couldn't understand what that little
The device was?
device was
Well,
and what it was supposed to do.
Sure. And then was that where the blanket was? Is that what you're talking about? The video blanket?
No, the device in the kitchen.
Sarah, you dropped your cell phone?
I guess it was in the kitchen.
In the kitchen.
And y'all were laying it on the corner. The little thing.
Oh, the light. So it's a touch light, and so it's believed that spirits use their energy to be able to communicate. And so since it's a light that you just literally have to touch to make it turn on, we were hoping that having a light that was there available, that if we asked questions, they could simply touch that light. It's kind of like a yes or no type of question. We didn't get any responses at that moment, but that was the first time we used that light.
But y'all had that little.
The other one. Okay, so the other one, the K2 meter, and what that does is that it measures energy. And so it has a spectrum of like 9 different lights on it that can go up and down. And so if you get responses, the response would be if it lights all the way up, or if you get a partial response that lights halfway up. So we were doing questions back and forth to see if we could get any activity. We were getting partial reads, but we didn't get anything that we felt was like solid answers. We don't always expect that we're going to get something every time we go somewhere. We do recognize that when we were doing the parts where we said, could you hear that? Or we were amplifying the audio. It is a little tougher to hear it with this outdoor environment. So if you watch it back on YouTube or Facebook, you'll probably be able to hear those things better. Morgan's got the K2 meter.
If anyone wants to see it, let me know.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to let anybody see any of our
Does anybody else have any questions? Yes, sir.
So, if I sounded like a nut job, I'll just let you know that when I was a kid, I had an experience in my home with what I call shadow.
Come forward a little bit if you want, so we can. And if you're not too shy to be on mic, if you don't want to be on mic, it's
I
fine.
can, I mean,
Okay, so everybody can hear your experience. Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, at the risk of sounding like completely like a nut job here.
That's right here. Yeah, you're good.
At the risk of not sounding like a nut job the first time. When I was a child, I had a lot of experience with death in my life. I lost my wife, my daughter. So 14 years before I seen a lot of film. But when I was a child, shortly after my grandfather passed, we had a lot of activity in my home. And it was basically what I like to refer to as shadow people. In my experience, shadow people are not good. And they're usually not even ghosts. Right? They're certainly worse than that. And you guys mentioned that there were some shadows here. One gentleman actually to try to do something not good in the house and was dealt with like folks are wanting to do in Texas, and someone tries to break into their home. And I'm just wondering if you guys have the sense of like any of this stuff could be malevolent.
So anytime we feel like anything starts to become a little bit more malevolent, like as you mentioned, like when the word devil came through, we don't like to kind of play with that aspect of it. You know, what we want to do is if somebody wants to come through and discuss, or maybe they're trapped or they don't know they've passed or whatever, we'll communicate with that all day long. But if anything that comes across that sounds more evil, we're done. You know, we don't want to open the door to that. But the part with the shadows was actually that breezeway between the kitchen and that front room. And if you go to the back of the house, it actually steps down. So the top of your head would be below the window. So there's no chance of a person having been out there, but that is where they saw the shadow was in that window. I don't want to do all the talking if you guys want to jump in.
That's also the same area where Morgan thought she saw a shadow when y'all were doing your
doorway. And let me explain also the shadow movement I saw in front of the fireplace. It wasn't a figure form. It's hard to explain. It was kind of like a blob shape. Yeah, exactly. It just kind of shot off in front of the fireplace. But definitely not a figure form. I should have specified, but everything that was going on, my mind was going 900 miles an hour. Trying to get words out of my mouth, it just wasn't happening. Very exciting. We go to a lot of places and nothing really happens. We will catch stuff during review, but while we're there, and it's kind of like, oh, slow night. Okay. You know, and yeah, a lot of feelings, but this place, it was just happening in front of us. It's very rare that we go to a place and just stuff is happening in front of us. So.
For the camera.
Hi, I'm Morgan. So I also wanted to add in that during this investigation, it was really difficult to catch a lot of the things that were happening because our cameras were draining so quickly. And all of our equipment, we use a lot of GoPros, and I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of the footage that some sports will catch on GoPros. They are built to withstand very cold temperatures, very hot temperatures, lots of different activities. And although we were filming on a really cold weekend, this was right before the freeze hit this year. All of our batteries were being drained, almost as quickly as we were being able to change them. So a lot of the things that were happening as things were being drained, and so we're running around like chickens with our heads cut off, trying to catch things on camera, and we would hear something and run and go, oh, did you have that? Did you get that battery? And they're like, well, I changed it 10 minutes ago, and then you hear the beep, and then it's off again. So that was one of our biggest struggles during this investigation.
Yeah, and the theory is spirits will draw that energy from those batteries to manifest to just any kind of communication. Yeah, knocking on something. Just so drawing that energy from our equipment kind of got us excited also. So we didn't mind changing out all these batteries. We didn't care. So Yes.
Yeah, obviously we would like to capture everything we can on camera, but we can't control that sometimes. They're doing the fireworks for us, huh? The clip where the house was, what we did is we called an abandonment, which we all left and we just left the cameras running. And we showed how some of those lights were turning on and off on their own. This is the cord that actually controls those lights. And you'll see it's actually a dial that you have to turn and it clicks on and off. It's not like a digital light or something that could just turn on and off by itself. You have to actually crank that dial to turn it on and turn it off. So when we had those lights going on and off, that was the first time we've actually ever had that happen. It was these types of lights basically, but just a smaller version of them. Anybody else have a question? Right here. Yes, ma'am. Not always. It's not like a seance like trying to do like devil worship or anything like that. It's really just kind of like to communicate, right? It's just saying, hey, we're open to communicate with you if you want to communicate with us. It's not something we necessarily do everywhere. When you do this type of investigation, there's a lot of different ways that you can try to communicate. And so sometimes we, might do a lot of spirit box at one location. Sometimes we might do the EMF detectors. We might do the EVPs. We try to do a bunch of things to see how somebody wants to communicate. And then once we start to get that communication, then we might hone in on that for the rest of the night. So no, it's not normal that we do that every time. But we were hitting, I don't want to say dead ends. A lot of the stuff we did capture, we didn't realize we captured it until a week later when we were going back and watching it. So sometimes when you're doing it throughout the night, you're like, man, we're not getting anything. Why don't we try this? Or why don't we try this? Or why don't we try this? I think that somebody else have a question. Who? Oh, okay. Okay. And I think we got somebody back there too.
One, how long does it take you guys to do your editing? And two, what's the scariest experience you guys have had so far?
Okay. So editing is the biggest process. So on any given investigation, we typically have approximately 40 cameras that are running, and those cameras can run anywhere from 6 to 10 hours. So that means after we leave here, we get to spend weeks and weeks and weeks watching through every bit of footage to see if we captured anything. And the reason we use so many cameras is because we can't be everywhere at once. And like we even saw in this episode, sometimes the noises or the things that were taking place were in another room. So if we didn't have those cameras set up, we wouldn't be able to verify that stuff. As for the editing process, Patrick probably had over 100 hours, I think, in this episode in editing. It's a process. I mean, I've been doing YouTube for probably 10 years, and the content that I create is different. But that type of content I can edit and turn it around quickly. But something like this, it's like putting together a TV episode. So there's a lot involved. It might not seem like it when you're watching it because it's just done well. I mean, at least I feel that way. But when you're looking at one room and you don't realize that you see 5 different camera angles, well, it takes time to get all that stuff set up properly. So yeah, the editing process takes a lot of time. And we're also always wearing microphones too. So it's not just the video that we're reviewing, it's also audio that we're reviewing. Yeah, and we all have regular jobs. Did anybody else have a question?
What's the most haunted place, if you want to call it that you've done?
Actually, before I get to that, he asked a 2-part question. I just realized that. So one of the ones that we had a lot of engagement, we went to Cold Spring, Texas, to a former jail. We visited that jail 4 or 5 different times, and we ended up turning that into a 3-part episode because we got a lot of evidence. That one we did a lot of spirit box. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's basically kind of like a radio receiver, but we scan it in backwards. So if you guys remember the old cars where you wanted to flip the radio stations and you'd hit scan and it real fast, well, we're doing that backwards, and then we're asking questions. So if you get consecutive words back to back over multiple different frequencies, then that theoretically should not be able to happen, right? So we do a lot of that, but we've switched up our spirit box style to a version called Estes method. So somebody will put the spirit box into headphones and wear a blindfold, and the other people in the room ask questions. So when you have the headphones on, you can't hear anybody else in the room, and you can't see anybody else in the room. So when we were at Cold Spring, we had a very kind of aggressive interaction. And on this episode, towards the end, when I said, are you the same person that kept saying, do it at Cold Spring? That's because that spirit box session went on for 7 to 10 minutes straight. And it was continually telling me, do it, do it, do it. But then multiple voices were all coming in over each other. It was almost like there's this many people standing here and all trying to yell to me to get my attention, to tell me what to do. So it was all just happening really fast. And then the questions that they were asking in the room, everything was just kind of lining up perfectly. So I don't want to necessarily say it was scary, but I think it was some of our most engaging evidence we've received.
And then that, please, y'all go check it out. Go to our YouTube channel. It's a 3-part series. One, and your question was one of the scariest. It wasn't scary, but we've probably gotten the most activity at that location. I think
For me, it was more scary watching it back because I didn't know what they were asking. And then once I realized, wow, that's crazy, like all this stuff aligned. And then not to mention, after I was done, I felt completely drained. I went into it with like full energy. And then once I was done, it's like I didn't sleep for a week. I was just completely drained.
Oh, I wanted to touch base on that investigation as well. That was one of my first investigations, and even just remembering and going back to it, I'm like starting to shake. During the Estes method, I was actually the one that was listening to the spirit box. They were asking questions, and they had said my name a couple of times, which, I mean, Patrick and I both get our names through the spirit box multiple times on different investigations. But this investigation, as I was sitting there listening, I heard a very, very, very deep growling voice come through. It was extremely, extremely deep and dark. And even to this day, I have never come across anything with that kind of tone and depth to it. I couldn't understand what it was saying, but it was saying something, and it came through once, and I kind of jolted a little bit. So I was like, okay, that didn't sound right. And then I heard it again, and it was even longer. And in that moment, it was like I felt the darkest emotions that anyone can ever even imagine. It was cold and dark, and I just broke down. And I immediately flung the headphones off. I looked at the guys, and I was like, I need a break. I can't. And they said, you want to turn the cameras off? I am a stern person on always record, because the moment that you stop recording is when you're going to get something. And I told them, yes, I want the cameras off. And to this day, I'm very affected by it. It was the coldest, darkest, most helpless and hopeless feeling that I've ever experienced. I hope to never experience that again. But the Cold Springs jail, most definitely top of my list. Most activity, most impact as an investigator that I've ever experienced.
We got some good stuff on audio and camera visual, so please check it out. I brought out one of the spirit boxes we have. I just kind of wanted y'all to listen, to kind of hear what y'all would hear when we have the headphones on. You see, right now it's just all white noise. When a spirit comes through, I mean, you'll hear different tones, male, female. Unfortunately, sometimes even sounds like children, which, kind of hits you sometimes. But this is what we will hear blasting in our ears, which with the blindfold on, we're not manipulated by anything. We can't see what words are being said. All we hear and all we translate is voices that we hear. Which doing 10 minutes of this can drive you crazy too.
To me, you almost, and we've been in partnership with 93Q in Houston, and they explained it as it almost feels like you're going into a trance, like you're going into a meditative state, and you kind of are because as you're listening, you're not listening directly. It's you start to relax, and then things start coming through, and like you said, is it goes through sweeps. So it's like if you were to be playing a song on one radio station and start, skipping to other ones, you shouldn't hear that same song as you're flipping stations. So that kind of works the same way as the spirit, theoretically, like you said, is supposed to be able to come through and talk consistently as you're changing those radio frequencies. Oh yeah, did anybody else have any other questions? Oh, yes. Oh, what do I think when I see something? Immediately, I want to run towards it because I want to figure out what it is and what it's doing here, what I can do to help it, and what it might want to say. I know that's my feeling anytime that I see something. There is a little bit of fear, but I know that there's probably a really good explanation for it, and that's what we try to do. What do you think?
Confusion. Yes.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out. I have actually lived in a home that was haunted for a good 5 years. A lot of audio stuff. I did see one shadow figure in my home, and it was in my little sister's bedroom, which really freaked me out. We left shortly after that, but I have seen, even at a hospital, I've seen spirit. I mean, it doesn't matter really where it's at. I really don't get freaked out. It's really just confusion for me. I'm just confused because I want to really, did I see what I just saw? Really? Did I just see that?
I was going to actually say, Carly, in our ATI, we have what we call ATI after the investigation, where we sit back and we rewatch our episode and we kind of collaborate, break it down, our theories and everything we think happened. And we actually came to a conclusion that you might have actually been drained that night, which is why you were so tired.
That's
Yeah.
valid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had my daughter at the time was 1, so yeah. It was. But it's very possible, and somebody else did tell me that they thought that the spirits were a lot more inclined to respond to me, which makes sense because I'm here all the time. And can I just say, I was blown away by the amount of evidence that y'all captured. And I don't mean this in any way negative towards y'all, but I thought this is going to be the most boring episode ever because nothing ever happens here. Like it's so beautiful and peaceful and calm and serene. And I was like, oh my God, we're just going to sit there staring at each other all night. But as y'all saw, it was just incredible evidence. And Morgan, I remember you saying at one point that you thought David was still around. Can you talk about that? So I do the research for us, and I try to keep it light going into an investigation because I don't want to go in with any preconceived ideas, emotions, or any biased opinions as I'm doing an investigation that might lead me towards one conclusion versus another. And there had been kind of some family rift, jealousy going on in the family, and immediately when I walked into the house, I felt like it was David. And I had touched on that with Carly, and I was like, I feel the more that we talk about him, the more I feel like the person that I'm feeling is him. And I was feeling a lot in that house. And in fact, my family members were laughing because at one point, as we were sitting at the quilting table, or the quilt, my sister made the joke that she goes, Morgan, you just don't have any time for this. Because I was sitting there and, in the episode, and I was like, yeah, oh, you want to go downstairs? Oh, okay, you can go. Well, before we started filming, as I was walking up the stairs, it felt so heavy and thick. It felt like I was walking through pudding. So by the time I got to the top of the stairs and I was actually able to sit down, I was drained. I could have fallen asleep right there because I was just so energetically drained. And it came across in the episode like, what's her attitude about? Jeez. But they often affect us that way. So when we were going through the ATI and we were thinking back to how excited Carly was to, and then all of a sudden it was like flipping the switch. She was like, guys, I can't make it. I can't do it. I gotta go. We're like, okay. And that's when we all sat around and we're like, that was around the time that we started getting a lot of activity. So it could have been feeding off of her energy because she wouldn't know the difference. And when you feel that difference, it's a very special kind of tired. It feels like it is bone deep. So, I mean, not to say that your 1-year-old does not exhaust you. We know how exhausting it can be. But it can affect you quite differently than regular exhaustion, or you've been up for 2-3 days and you're just tired. But yeah, does anybody else have any other questions? I thought I saw a hand back there. Oh,
I have 2 questions.
yes.
Have your parents ever died like that on another site?
No.
Is there any history of a child named Tiffany in here?
Not that I have found. So, yeah, not to our knowledge. This house was owned and lived in by French descendants for a long time, and then it kind of went to people who were related but not direct descendants. And then in the 40s, it sat abandoned until the 1960s. But like I was saying in the episode, the majority of the items in the home don't belong to the French family. They belong to other people from that time period. And in fact, I like to specifically point out the items that are French family pieces because we just don't have that many. So it could have been one of those things where it was attached to something else. Oh, somebody had another question.
Is the cemetery on this property?
Yeah, it's right behind us. Yeah. So this cemetery is not very big. Only John Jr. the second and his wife and most of their children are buried here. David was the French's eldest son. John Jr. the second was their youngest son. David's actually buried in Magnolia Cemetery here in Beaumont. John and Sally are actually buried in Merkel, Texas, because in their 80s, John just decided life in Beaumont was not really up to par anymore. So he decided to go up to Merkel, Texas to open a boarding house, and that is where he and Sally are buried. But yes, right behind us, we have a cemetery here. So I am not sure that Charlie is buried anywhere on this property. I mentioned earlier, we think we might know. So across East Tex Freeway, there's a little tiny park called Combest Park, and that would have been literally right outside of where their original land grant ended. So if it was true that Miss Sally said, don't bury him on my property, it's very possible that that's where he's found.
Yes.
Ooh, yes, we have to come on down, and I like it.
When you first started your investigation, did anyone of you get scared and change your mind? It was like, I changed my mind. I don't want to do this.
Our glorious founder.
There is one place. There's one place. There is a cemetery, Martha's Chapel in Huntsville, Texas. Melvin and I went.
5 years ago.
Yeah, like 5 years ago. This was exactly one night after we did an investigation, a house investigation. It was just to get some pictures. It was during the day. Get some pictures, some video, just mess around. As soon as it started getting dark, we're like, you know what? We might as well stay, do a little something. And when the sun completely went down, that's when I was like, you know what? We have enough. I think we got enough, right? right?
Yeah, it's like it wasn't like a city. We're all from Houston, so it wasn't like a Houston cemetery. It was pitch black,
In the middle of nowhere.
and you start hearing noises, and you can't see where you're walking, 1 foot in front of you. Yeah, and then we had a few odd things that came through on the spirit box as well. So
Yeah, so that's the only time I've been somewhere that I kind of got a little freaked out. Every other place, I mean, this is just what we love, so we don't really get scared, you know. Now there is one part, one video. It's the San Jacinto one that we keep talking about. You'll have to go watch it. I had the pleasure of calling him during evidence review and saying, "Hey, bud, I need you to go to your computer." It was like 2 a.m. You need to go to your computer right now. Sit down. I need you to pull up this clip because something incredible happened behind him. He had no idea. Something happened behind him, and he had no idea it happened. So, of course, when we watched it, he was a little bothered by it.
Imagine
So-
So imagine this is like a doorway right here, and I'm standing probably right around there, and there's a camera facing this way. And in this doorway, there were curtains, and somebody pulled the curtains back, and then just as I moved, you see the curtains release and shuffle. And there was nobody else in the building except for me and the gentleman that was standing right next to me. So those are the types of things that simply unexplainable. A lot of the times when we have the opportunity, we will tell them to turn the air conditioners off because we don't want to have anything that can contaminate our investigation. So that was always everybody's first question. Well, was there air conditioner running? No, there was no AC on whatsoever. And it was only myself and one other person in the building, and he was standing right here. And the curtain was a good 10 foot away from where we were. So that was kind of eerie. And we found that months and months later after having visited there. Question right here in the front.
Have you ever been in the Minger Hotel in San Antonio?
We have not been in Minger. So coming up on Black Friday, we're actually going to investigate Hotel Icon downtown in downtown Houston. And they also own the Emily Morgan in San Antonio. And so, I'm sorry, Emily Morgan. Yeah. Emily Morgan in San Antonio, and which is across the street from the Minger, and is also believed to be haunted. So we're going to do Emily Morgan, and we're hoping that once we get a successful investigation there, that we can get our foot in the door at Minger.
About 15 years ago, me and some friends stayed, and she had one of the ES thing, and I swear we saw orbs. They just said there's certain parts to go in and not.
Yeah, a
We
lot
didn't
of
know what we were doing. We just wanted to have fun.
it's fun. I mean, that's how it started with us. Was kind of like, oh, that's fun. Let's go do this. And this was like when we first started doing this was probably right around the time it started having like ghost adventures and things like that on TV. We didn't have the equipment back then to do this type of stuff, so we were very limited. But yeah, Minger's on our list. If you name off just about any place in Texas, it's on our list. Sometimes the most difficult part, though, is gaining access to these venues. Sometimes they're not open to having somebody come investigate. Or, for instance, the Spaghetti Warehouse is one of the most known places in Houston. It's no longer the Spaghetti Warehouse. Harvey flooded it out, and it's now a sports bar. So our opportunity to go in there is gone. We'll never be able to go in there and do an investigation because it's no longer the same venue. Yes, sir. Yes.
State would give y'all access to San Jacinto Valley.
That's the one you want to do, right?
A lot of people died there.
The San Jacinto battlefield is what he's talking about.
Yeah, that is actually the battlefield. Yes, there have been talks, and a matter of fact, you're going to think we're crazy because on the way here tonight we were talking about the San Jacinto battlefield, and the battleship Texas is another one. But I like your thinking. If I knew somebody that I could call, I would do it in a heartbeat or knock on their door. Because we can go, obviously the battlefield is open. You can go, but if they see a bunch of people running around with a bunch of ghost hunting equipment, how long will we be able to stay? You know? So the proper thing to do, of course, is get permission. So we would love to do that. The battleship also.
If anybody has access to any places that are supposedly haunted and can get us in the door, let us know.
So this was my first full investigation with the team. I saw my brother having a lot of fun with Patrick, and I was like, I'm gonna join them and see how this all goes. But I got to say, John J. French was really fun, just due to the fact that we did get evidence, and there was really no interference because there's no power at the house, which is why we were running into all these issues with battery drainage because we couldn't just plug our cameras in the whole time. So it was constantly like, we got to change batteries. It felt like we spent more time changing batteries than we actually got to investigate. But the one clip where it said, "Did you see me?" I was the one that was reviewing that camera at the time when I'm just working and I'm listening and I'm watching, and I heard it. I about fell out of my desk chair because my arm, the hair of my arms, just instantly, I was like, I cannot believe that we got that on camera. The one interesting part about it is when you upload to YouTube or any social media site, you can tell it the captions. We never upload the caption information. We let it automatically caption it on its own. So my dad, unfortunately, he can't hear really well anymore. So my brother set it up for captions, and the TV captions actually could hear the same words off of that video, and it's all automated. You have anything to add?
No, I think when I was answering his question, somebody else over here had a question. Right here. Yes, ma'am.
You've ever investigated Jefferson, Texas?
Jefferson, Texas. What's the place on our list there?
So in Jefferson, well, Jefferson, I mean, there's the Grove, Jefferson Hotel. Yeah, a bunch of places we would definitely love.
Like the whole place.
Yeah, the whole city.
The whole
Right?
city. We'll take anywhere in the whole city.
You've been, what location?
They have access. I went and talked to them. They didn't know me from home. And they had to go ahead and go.
Oh, there's a restaurant. Oh, see, I didn't know about that. Okay. It's okay. I hear you. Well, I'm definitely gonna look into that because the Jefferson Hotel and the Grove are a must hit for us. Just drive by.
I never had y'all's pictures. I had eyes, ears, and hands.
Those are the best ones.
And I saw and experienced a lot of things. It's a really neat little family.
We will definitely visit it, and when we do, I'm sure we will make a video.
I hope so.
Well, I'm going to hold you to it. And did you already subscribe to our YouTube channel?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
Did you want to come up here?
Oh, and go to Gettysburg.
Oh.
Any questions at all?
Yeah.
Start one, research around if there's any in your area. I mean, for us, it was when we first started it. Melvin mentioned it earlier. Before we had all the equipment and we were just doing it for fun, there was 4 of us, just a bunch of friends that we just all grew up with. And when we did it, we had a digital camera. Night vision cameras weren't even that popular then, and then they were around, but you're not spending $2 or $3 grand on a bunch of 20-year-olds. And we're just not going to do that. So I would suggest grabbing a bunch of friends who are in this area. Are you from Beaumont? Okay, yeah. Grab some friends up. Start calling some of these places. A lot of these haunted locations, websites, you can even book through the websites. Makes it very convenient. Most of the time, there's a fee. Sometimes you might be able to get into some places with no charge. But yeah, definitely. And ghosting equipment, they even sell them in bundles on Amazon if you want to get like a starter pack or something. A lot of the stuff you can even buy at Walmart. So
EMS for the cheapest things is now.
yeah, I mean, just any like store, Target, Walmart, you can buy a lot of stuff on Amazon. So, but yeah, for sure. 1 second. Yes, ma'am.
I heard that Galveston have a lot of haunted places. Have you been to Galveston?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We don't have any videos from Galveston, but not yet. But very, very haunted. A lot of people have tragically passed in unfortunate circumstances. The hurricane of 1900 for one.
Right.
Yeah, meaning we just found out that the Walmart in Galveston on the islands is where the old orphanage was with
Oh
thousands
yeah,
of
I
people.
saw that on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah. So there have been many claims. An ex-employee actually wrote a book about her experiences when she worked at the Walmart. So she has a whole book of everything that's happened to her.
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook.
So,
Yeah.
no question.
Believe in ghosts manifest as creatures like bugs, animals,
I'm not laughing at your question. It's just we actually had somebody who had a claim of a moth. It wasn't like a moth, a little moth, but like a huge.
So the way he described it is, this is where we're going to be investigating soon, the Hotel Icon. I got to meet the general manager, walk through, and he relocated here from Las Vegas to take over management there. And so when he first relocated to Houston, he lived in the hotel for a few weeks until he could find a place. And he had heard of the haunted things, and he didn't think much of it. But 3 consecutive nights, he woke up with what he says was a moth that was like the size of a football. So like this big, just hovering at the foot of his bed. And he said the moment he would move, it would just disappear. And it happened 3 consecutive nights. On the 3rd night, he said, I'm not taking my eyes off of it. And so he stayed focused on it. And it went down to what he described as an archway in the room. I haven't seen this room yet. We haven't investigated there yet, but he's just kind of giving us his firsthand stories. And he said that that was the moment that he began to believe. He didn't know if it was trying to lead him somewhere, but the moment he would turn his head or he would catch up to it, it would just dissipate. It would just disappear completely. We haven't had any firsthand experiences like that. That was my first time hearing of something like that directly from someone else. So we're going to do some research to see what the significance of a moth could be in the paranormal realm.
one time I was at a cemetery at night and a big black moth, like this big, started flying at me repeatedly until it front of me in the stands.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that's the thing too. Is a lot of the times these experiences, obviously everything can't be captured on a camera, but you have that firsthand memory, and I'm sure it's going to stay with you forever. I think right behind the question.
When y'all need the links to do the spirit box session with those of us who don't have access to y'all be open to it?
How late are we allowed to be here? Y'all want to do it here, or did you want to?
I mean, since we're all here,
We could maybe go to the cemetery, or how do we want to do this? If we want to do it where everybody can hear, because we won't be able to do it on a microphone if we go over there. Yeah, if a few of you want to go, or whoever wants to go to the cemetery, please watch your step, get your cell phones, put your flashlights on, because there are obstacles. I learned that when I was here investigating. Another question right here somewhere? Yes.
I know we wanted to. We wanted to.
Myrtle Plantation, Patrick.
Oh, St. Francisville.
St. Francisville? I think Patrick knows more about that one than I do.
I don't think
Yeah, this Cajun boy knows all about it. So St. Francisville, one of the oldest plantations in Louisiana, and yes, one of the most haunted places in America, not just Louisiana. And
I grew up in Louisiana, 8th grade trip there.
just for the day,
Well, when I went back to the Gulf, like, and I didn't see anything. It's what I felt.
I've been trying for 20 years to take my wife for a weekend getaway there, and she won't do it.
I have a story for you, but I will not tell you.
I will find you. I would book the whole house too.
About the whole farm.
There was another place, and I don't
All right, anyone who wants to be a part of that spirit box session, they're gonna go to the cemetery. We are gonna be cleaning up over here.
Do you guys
So
want to
just
use your phone?
have your little flashlights out on your phone. They're probably gonna do it for about 5 to 10 minutes, but thank y'all so much for coming out. I really hope y'all enjoyed it,
I'm not
and
worried about doing
I
live.
hope
You can
to
do
see
those
y'all
live.
at events in the future. Thank you.